Well, kia ora everyone and welcome back. The hearing is reconvened and Dave has added to the apologies and assuming that the mover and second is happy with that, added Sarah to that. So it'll either be, it's an apology for lateness and then she may arrive or be online. But we do have a quorum in terms of local government requirements for the quorum. So unless anyone's got any other matters. Oh, yes, yep, sorry. Nanaya, if you could open in karakia, please.
Kia ora tātou on this very cool, brisk morning. Nō reira, a tui ai runga, tui ai raro ka ronga te pō, ka ronga te ao. I te kōrero i te wānanga, pua takataka, pua whio. Pua whio te marama ahunuku, te marama ahurangi. Turi e whakamauna kia tīna. Haumi e hui e
Ai ki ai.
Kia ora tātou.
And there is interest by some members that if we happen to finish earlier, that would be welcomed. And to that end, unless there's violent objection from members, was going to cut the luncheon break from 40 minutes to 25. People. Okay. Very good. So we'll move now to the Chedworth Properties Limited submission, which is submission 19 on page 533 of our agenda. Brendan. And if you can just press the microphone button so it comes up as red.
Yep, gotcha. Perfect.
Oh, and Nanaya, can you
sorry.
turn off yours? Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so you have 20 minutes. Dave will ring the bell at 10. That just gives you an indication you've got another 10 minutes. And if you're wanting to leave some time for us to ask any questions, also within that 20-minute period.
Great, a bit quicker than that, so I'll help you guys to get out of here a bit earlier. Beautiful day, don't blame you.
Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Brendan Hewitt, and I am the General Manager of Chedworth Properties Limited, or CPL. So CPL is a long-standing developer in Hamilton and has delivered over 3,500 sites in Hamilton over the past 30 plus years. Currently, we are working on the subdivision Green Hill Park, located at the northern end of Ruakura in the northeast of Hamilton. We're about halfway through that development with over 600 new residential sites created and around 500 new homes built. Along with the residential development, we have a neighbourhood centre planned, which will include a supermarket, a bar restaurant, a childcare centre, a medical centre and pharmacy, and 12 retail spaces. Our vision for this neighbourhood centre is to make it a destination not only for the residents of Green Hill Park, but for all of Hamilton. So it's going to be a really high quality project. We're also currently completing Webb Drive, or the Spine Road, which runs from Pardoa Boulevard in the north, and eventually will connect through TGH land to the university in the south. Furthermore, in the future, we will be providing 14 hectares of industrial land, which will tie into the rest of the Ruakura industrial developments. We're therefore involved in residential, commercial, and industrial development within the city. I estimate that we have another 10 years of development to go, with completion of Green Hill Park being around the mid-2030s, depending on market influence during that time. Generally, as per our submission, we are supportive of the good work the Future Proof partners are doing and support the vision and principles of Future Proof. I won't go into the details of our written submission, but would just like to reiterate my thoughts around land use patterns, employment land, and transport. Starting with the vision and principles, the future-proof document, section 2.6, seeks to avoid unnecessary urban sprawl. In my opinion, this is particularly relevant in the northeast of Hamilton, as the expressway now provides a clear and logical delineation for development. As the panel will be aware, there are already a number of growth areas within Ruakura, and while some areas would lend themselves to further development in time, such as the R2 growth cell, currently it would be my opinion that there is sufficient capacity in these existing areas to provide for the residential, commercial and industrial stock needed in the northeast of Hamilton. At this time, I do not believe there is any need to look further, any need to look for further development areas east of the expressway. The above point flows into 2.7, which seeks to ensure industrial development is located in key growth areas and does not undermine established centres. Again, with Ruakura now well underway, there is capacity to meet demands for the foreseeable. Further development beyond this would undermine the hard work being undertaken by CPL, TGH and Pragma in Ruakura, particularly any further development east of the expressway. With this in mind, I want to convey to the panel that the overall master planning for Ruakura and the northeast of Hamilton already provides an appropriate balance between housing and employment land. The local authorities are likely to come under pressure over the next 10 years to make changes to the master plan, including requests for changing industrial land to residential. However, the thing that Hamilton needs in the northeast and Ruakura is employment land. The provision of this is considered vital not only to the success of Ruakura, but Hamilton as a whole. There are already some great momentum behind developments, and Hamilton is moving forward as a leader in New Zealand for new development and employment opportunities, and that is how we will continue to grow the city. We need to bring people in by giving them opportunities to be employed, and in Ruakura, there's the added benefit of residential developments in close proximity, which supports the ethos of live, work, play. We therefore do not wish to see this employment land be eroded by either changes of land use or through being undermined by further developments outside of what is already in place for this area. In terms of transport, we want to ensure that Ruakura and Greenhill Park are adequately serviced by public transport. Our roading designs have provided for bus stops and access, and a rapid transport system running from eastern parts of the city to the CBD will be vital to the prosperity of both Greenhill Park and Ruakura. CPL has provided 3-metre wide footpaths throughout Greenhill Park to provide for active transport, including cycling. It would be great to see cycle-friendly footpaths or dedicated cycle paths between the CBD and eastern parts of the city. The east-west connection between Ruakura and the CBD does need some attention, as in my opinion, it's not friendly to either walking or cycling, or even public transport or private vehicles for that matter. We would therefore like to see some attention given to this connection, and I note that is specified as one of the connections in the future-proof document. So to sum up, we believe at this time capacity for residential, commercial and industrial land on the eastern side of the city is provided for within Ruakura. There is no need to provide for any further development, especially east of the expressway. Greenhill Park is expected to be completed around the mid-2030s, and we have capacity to provide around 100 sections, residential sections per year. And I estimate we have around 10 years of supply for residential development in this area remaining. We're keen to see the development pattern in Ruakura, with Greenhill Park providing the residential land, while the current employment land is developed as employment land to ensure there are employment opportunities. We believe employment land and the provision of industrial and commercial developments in Ruakura is vital to the success of this area and Hamilton as a city and the live, work, play ethos. And finally, we're just keen to see that improved connection between Ruakura and the CBD. So finally, John Webb and I, who couldn't make it today, appreciate the hard work that the Future Proof team are doing, and we're excited about the future and look forward to continuing to work with HCC and WRC on delivering high quality developments in Hamilton. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. I'll open it up for any questions. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation and what you're doing out in that area as well. Just a quick question around schools in the area.
Yeah.
There doesn't, my recollection, there doesn't seem to be much on the eastern side of Wairī Drive.
Yeah.
Are you in any talks of MOE or?
We are
maybe it's
not.
sort of
My
where
understanding that
that's
in the past, there were some discussions around that, but MOE was reluctant, I believe, in the past to provide any further schools out there. I believe under Plan Change 15 that Tainui currently has in with HCC, there is potentially a school being looked at, but that's, yeah, I'm not sure how far that will actually go at this stage. So no, at this stage, all we will be providing is a childcare centre, and there's heaps of demand in terms of that, but nothing in terms of schools at this stage.
No.
Kia ora. I'm just interested to, you can give me clarity around the university, what area of the university that you're referring to?
Oh, so it's through, with the Spine Road?
Yeah.
So the Spine Road, yeah, basically is going to be the road running from Pardoa in the north, so
Okay.
up through Greenhill Park. And then we're going to end it at our southern boundary, and then that goes into TGH land, so Tainui Group Holdings land, and then that'll run all the way down through the industrial developments through Rokura, and then my understanding is it does end down near the university.
So it won't be part of the RFR,
What's the RFR, sorry?
right of first refusal area of land?
I'm not sure. Beyond our southern boundary, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what.
Thank you.
My understanding
David.
is it cuts through as you come down through the industrial park at the moment, and it does a hard left at the university. That will just keep going straight through.
Okay, doesn't appear to be any other questions of Brendan? No, thanks very much, Brendan.
Right, thanks again.
And
Really
thanks
appreciate
for
it.
the clarity and presentation. So we'll move to our next submitter, Te Waka Board, submission 23, page 539, and welcome, Fiona.
A little bit efficient.
Oh, it's Friday. Yes. So
Bit
you
of pressure now.
you probably heard, been allocated 20 minutes. Dave will ring the bell at 10. That's just an indication in terms of leaving a bit of time then towards the end for any questions that the members may have. So over to you.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. It's my privilege as Chief Executive of Te Waka to be here today to share our perspective on the draft 2024 Future Proof Strategy. It's a roadmap that's pivotal for our regions tomorrow. So at Te Waka, our mission is to lift economic performance across the region, and as you are well aware, we're dedicated to working in partnership to get things done. We look to unearth opportunities that will lead to economic growth. So our primary purpose in making this submission is to assist Future Proof to forge a robust strategic alignment between the Future Proof strategy and Waikato's economic development priorities and that of New Zealand's economic development priorities. The crux of our submission is the need for integration and alignment of spatial and economic development planning. Two concepts that are closely interconnected and ideally mutually reinforcing. The relationship between spatial and economic planning has long been recognised as reciprocal and crucial for enabling sustainable and resilient economic growth that in turn delivers an enhanced prosperity and quality of life, not just through enhanced job and income opportunities, but also through the cultivation of a skilled workforce. It improves healthcare and housing accessibility, access to societal amenities, and also, importantly, infrastructure that supports sustainability long-term, a resilient economy, and social services. So we are well aware that as a region, we are part of the Golden Triangle. The region is blessed with numerous strengths, including an existing diversified economy, a vibrant export sector, a rich Māori economy, demographic vitality, natural assets, and this all combined makes it a unique place with strong economic growth potential. However, just as we know from yesterday's announcement, announcements around GDP, decline can be problematic. So too can very rapid growth. And growing pains experienced by our region are an example of that, with local communities, councils, infrastructure, and the economy experiencing significant pressures. Population growth in the future-proof region has generated several issues, including a decrease in housing stock, pressure on schools, health facilities, and resources. Infrastructure is a cornerstone of supporting economic development, and yet our region, like much of regional New Zealand, has a large infrastructure deficit, particularly in transport, housing, and utility infrastructure. In submissions from other stakeholders, including Spark, field days, and housing providers, it highlights that growth is putting pressure on our infrastructure, our primary sector, and agencies are having to catch up with these infrastructure requirements. The future-proof strategy is an opportunity for us all to present one message with one voice and one plan. The region's infrastructure deficit is compounded further by a current housing shortfall of, in particular, around a waiting list of 2,564 families for social housing. We know that failing to attain affordable housing outcomes will hinder progress in various other areas, including economic development, health, wellbeing, and education. Despite population growth in the Waikato surpassing that of other regions in New Zealand, it has not translated into increased productivity, leaving the region trailing behind the national average. The productivity challenge is compounded by stagnant export levels as a percentage of regional GDP, highlighting a declining regional balance of payments despite the Waikato's historical dominance in the primary sector, often referred to as the economic engine of Aotearoa. This underscores the need to enhance specialised product development in the region's largest sector, alongside advanced manufacturing, technology, and green energy. In light of these reflections, we have proposed a suite of strategies aimed at aligning the future-proof vision with the region's economic development priorities. Implementing a decision-making framework grounded in evidence and regional economic priorities for the economy now and the future economy. Developing a clear infrastructure roadmap that creates certainty for investors, often referred to as a pipeline. Adopting a strategic, economic-led approach towards priority development areas, highlighting their economic merit and how that economic outcome helps contribute to balancing the economic social ledger. Promoting industry clusters through strategic infrastructure and land use planning, fostering productivity. Exploring innovative funding models for infrastructure development. Recently, we have seen the Infrastructure Commission publish the nation's appetite for user-pays infrastructure. And also implementing a comprehensive dashboard that tracks our journey towards environmental, economic, and social well-being. The journey towards a future-proof Waikato is a collective undertaking by us all. It requires strategic foresights, innovative thinking, and a commitment to our region's prosperity. Together we can chart a course that not only addresses our immediate challenges, but also lays down a resilient foundation and optionality for generations to come. And I'll end it there.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. I'll open it up for questions from members. Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you for the submission and presenting, Fiona. I just wanted to unpack your commentary in the submission around encouraging the wet industry, given that you will probably understand and appreciate the challenges that we have in respect of that water space. Are you able to just sort of elaborate on that?
Our focus there was that there's a hint, the rapid growth that is needed to not substitute, but support a growing economy needs some problem solving around infrastructure utilities around water. So we believe that there is the potential for growth for wet industry demand. There is the demand for wet industries. However, there is a hurdle there in terms of infrastructure. So we're pointing to that. Obviously, funding solutions would be ideal to help break down that current hurdle.
Timing off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Angela?
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Yeah, my question would be, how do you see us working with you
Mhm.
more proactively around this space? And within the future-proof strategy, could we be a bit more explicit about those economic outcomes that we're seeking?
Mhm.
Highlighting the fact that we're still waiting on the mapping for industrial land and business land. So a couple of questions there.
Yeah, sure. I'll respond to your last question first. The answer is yes. In terms of how we work more closely, we are fortunate to be a non-voting member of Future-Proof and have a much improved engagement and relationship with Future-Proof over the last 18 months and have increased the economic perspective, taking into account its absolute interdependency on social outcomes to ensure that when we are planning, we are taking into account not just a profitability or a GDP, but also the other form of capital outcomes. So what that would look like in terms of we would be speaking more to what that labour shortages will continue. We do know that job growth is expected to outpace growth in the working age population. We're all aware of that. Those are the types of models and scenarios we would like to be investing a bit more time in and being able to contribute to Future-Proof based on the planning decisions that are proposed.
If I may, one final question. You mentioned in your submission around affordable housing and the negative outcomes that come from not providing that. And then you also mentioned about different funding models for that affordable housing. Can you just outline what you're doing in that space?
So we're very much a facilitator and advocator across the multiple affordable housing entities in the region. Obviously, we are also advocating the known statistical outcomes of rangatahi, whānau, when there is secure, safe lodging for all. So that's effectively our role in affordable housing. We don't play a role in funding per se.
Okay, thank you.
Nāia?
Tēnā koe, Fiona.
Tēnā koe.
I'm just curious to know more about the well-being in terms of your recommendation. Is that based around equality or equity?
It would be both. So in terms of when we speak to the economic social ledger, we're talking about not just a financial outcome, we're talking about access to social services, access to education, attraction of international students into education, health care facilities, and how we are looking at place-based planning for communities, not just, we need an industry cluster here or an industry cluster there.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Fiona, a couple of questions. In terms of the infrastructure roadmap that you commented on, two parts of that. What's the time frame you see of that roadmap going out to? And then secondly, what would be the Te Waka expectations of what that roadmap contains or outlines?
Okay. The timeline I would refer to our Waikato Bay of Plenty Freight Action Plan that was 2020 to 2030 effectively, took that where we saw we predicted a 45 to 65 increase in freight movements, or freight growth, sorry, not movements. So the timeline for the infrastructure pipeline, I would suggest, is 30 years. I appreciate that there are some submissions that see that as too far. The pipeline needs to accommodate optionality for land use, and in that provides future generations opportunity, so we're not locked in. I would envisage the pipeline has clear prioritisation of interconnected benefit, that benefit being social and economic. Those projects, initiatives in the pipeline are funded in terms of there is a solution for funding. That's one of the hurdles to be a part of the pipeline. That doesn't mean there's not more needed. However, what's in the pipeline is what we are going to implement to ensure that we can have a dashboard of monitoring progress.
No, thank you for that. Then the second question, you talked about, or the submission discusses the adoption of a robust decision-making framework that's evidence-based and accounts for the region's economic priorities and key growth enablers. So just interested in terms of where you see the gaps currently in terms of the future-proof approach and that decision-making.
Sure. Ideally, if we go to a quantitative space, high-value job creation or not, where employment intensity is now versus where we predict it will be in 10, 20, 30 years' time. Pathways for any, measures for productivity impact, either positive or negative, because that encapsulates innovation as well. And any significant or material population shifts would be the other predicted population shifts. So productivity and population shifts and high value job creation as well as job creation.
Oh, thank you. That's helpful. No other questions? So thanks very much, Fiona. Dave, do we have the Property Council online? So we're now moving to the New Zealand Property Council. They're both online, and Logan Rainey and Morgan Jones. Welcome to you both. You have 20 minutes. We will let you know after 10 minutes so that if you then would like to leave some time towards the end for any questions that members may have in terms of your submissions. Otherwise, over to who's opening in terms of Morgan.
I'll be opening. Yes, thank you very much, Bill or Councillor Wosley, and to all the all those here today. Sorry, did I say councillor? I should say commissioner. So I'll be speaking for us this morning. Kia ora koutou, good morning. So my name is Morgan Jones. I'm the chair of the Property Council Central Regional Committee. I'd also just like to introduce, as you've done, Bill, Logan Rainey, who is in the Property Council's advocacy team. We've got about you mentioned 20 minutes, probably close to 5 to 10 minutes of just an oral run through, capturing a summary of our submission, and then we'll be, both Logan and I will be available for questions and discussion. So I'll start by running through that. Property is the second largest industry in the Waikato. The Property Council champions the property sector, and in the Waikato we represent 94 member companies that include private, public and charitable sectors. So thank you for having us today, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and share our industry's perspective. We'd like to begin by saying that the Property Council have long championed spatial planning, particularly where this is evidence-based, practical, integrated, fundable and flexible to work with a dynamic marketplace and changing community needs. We welcome the strategy update, and we see a number of areas that we'd like to discuss for improvement. So we'll run you through these now. The first one being development infrastructure. One area of note for us is the funding of enabling infrastructure. On one hand, we would like to thank Futureproof for identifying the infrastructure that's needed to support development across the region. However, our concerns are that there's a number of projects identified that are either partially funded or not funded at all. We need viable funding pathways for infrastructure, which is critical for meeting the region's needs for housing and business land into the future. One mechanism our submission talks to for addressing this is alternative approaches to funding and financing. The Property Council recommends that Futureproof and partner councils undertake work in this area to implement a range of transparent beneficiary pays alternative funding models. One example of this is special purpose vehicles, and as enabled under the Infrastructure Funding and Financing Act, they can be used in the region. We strongly support using these to fund infrastructure. Other examples, which you'll be aware of, are targeted rates or public-private partnerships. Commissioner Wasley, you'll be very familiar with examples in the Bay of Plenty that the Property Council have championed, such as Tauranga City Council's special purpose vehicle for Te Manawatakio Te Papa, the civic precinct, and also the Tauranga transport system. Another mechanism is through continued advocacy for greater central government co-investment, which is underway and stepped up over recent times, and which will help unlock and make more affordable new infrastructure in the Waikato. The second point that we'll talk to is the capacity assessment and spatial strategy. We have several comments on this. The first one being the residential capacity assessment. We'd like to acknowledge the work undertaken to date to develop the modelling that sits in behind the updated strategy. However, our concern that we have is the shortfall in residential capacity, particularly in Hamilton. There seems to be a reliance on plugging the deficit by providing additional capacity across the wider region and other future-proof councils. That approach will create additional pressure on infrastructure, particularly transport, and we've already raised our concern about plugging current funding gaps. You'll be acutely aware of the local authority funding gaps right across the country, and right now we're working, for instance, through things like development contributions increases, rates increases, and other funding issues that are rising right across that local authority landscape. We recommend working with partners such as Hamilton City Council to plan for additional housing through both greenfield but also high quality intensification. This could include areas such as walkable catchments, central city, or key transport nodes. That's the first. The second is the business capacity assessment. We think updating the business capacity modelling that sits behind this future-proof refresh is critical and a priority. It's difficult to plan for the next 30 years of urban growth without knowing the demand for business land. And at the moment, the refresh strategy is relying on modelling from different dates, some of it going back to 2021, where we've had a significant market shift since then. So we see this as a priority to build that evidence base to make sure it's accurate. And on this part, we're having stories from various members across the region where they're hitting this as a problem. One example is the shortage of industrial land. We can see this in the market through low vacancy rates for industrial. Hamilton has a vacancy rate of 2.1%. It's got rising industrial rents, rising land values. So by restricting this critical land piece, we're actually inflating that part of the market to reduce our competitiveness. Shortages of business land are also compounded by issues such as the National Policy Statement on highly productive land. So there's wider issues at play. The crux of the issue is the NPS's 10-year timeframe, whereas Futureproof is operating on that 30-year horizon. There are significant portions of the Waikato that are classed as some form of highly productive land, and ensuring that there is planning alignment around business land versus some of those NPS requirements is critical. Next part is our approach to greenfields. Alongside our support for greater urban intensification, and infill housing we'd like to discuss, enabling better greenfield development. The Property Council have always supported the notions of cities growing both up and out to meet our growth and communities' needs. But with the right planning approach, we've got the potential to create highly livable master plan communities across the Waikato. Taking a nuanced approach to greenfield development is critical. The draft strategy identifies large areas of land as either wāhi toitu, protected from new development, or wāhi toi ora, areas that we need to carefully manage to avoid risks. We have concerns the current approach may be too blunt and doesn't allow for the extent to which risk can be mitigated or dealt with through evidence such as private plan change and the provision of future infrastructure. We'll turn now to the Transport and Emissions Reduction Plan. When it comes to promoting mode shift, we note the importance of choices being in place and operating ahead of encouraging people to other modes such as active transport. The Property Council supports a balanced approach and strikes the appropriate mix between preservation of roading and investment in transport alternatives. We can't ignore the importance of electric vehicles as a source for emissions reduction. In terms of the proposed rapid public transport network, the Property Council supports mass rapid transport that particularly unlocks future housing opportunities and urban intensification. It's critical if we're going to achieve our regional ambitions on topics like housing affordability and climate change. In saying that, a rapid transport network is a massive step change for the Waikato. Work towards the goal, we believe, should remain focused on delivering aspirations in an efficient manner and cost-effective manner. Engagement with the private sector to develop effective, affordable and equitable funding is also critical. The implementation plan is something that we've submitted on. When it comes to the plan, we'd like to see it remain in the public strategy rather than as a separate standalone document. However, we also welcome the development of clear KPIs by Future for the implementation plan, because translating the planning and the strategy into implementation in reality is critical. Ultimately, successful implementation will require incorporation of various councils' long-term plans, annual plans, investment in infrastructure, and critically development contributions plans. DCs are an important incentive or disincentive for development that will shape speed, time to market, affordability, and ultimately the spatial outcomes that are driven from the top by Future-Proof. So in conclusion, thank you for listening to us today. Thank you for the opportunity to submit on this important document, refresh, and to reiterate, we welcome the update to the strategy and appreciate the work that's gone into it. And we're open to questions on these areas where we see scope for future refinement. Thank you.
Okay, no, and thanks, Morgan. Just in terms of the business assessment work, the partnership is still waiting for that final piece of work. And once we receive that, it's intended to send that out to all submitters and provide an opportunity for submitters to respond in writing on that particular piece of work in a time frame that then allows us to consider that assessment and any of that feedback when we start deliberations in the first week of May. So there's a bit more process and seeking of comment to go around that particular matter. And just whilst I've got the microphone, in terms of yesterday we heard from some submitters the need for us to perhaps take a more new approach to the provision and of business land. For example, and that related, for example, in terms of provision for wet industries. So I'm just interested in the Property Council's view on that type of approach, as opposed to not just a generic one, but a more nuanced or focused one in terms of industry types or activity?
Very good. Thank you, Bill. I mean, I can talk to that initially and pass it over to Logan, who I'm sure will have something to add. But on the first point, that's really reassuring to hear, because that's something our submission identified just around the modelling, assessment and evidence sitting behind the business capacity and so on. So we look forward to receiving that information. Probably the second part, just around things like the wet industries and so on. A bit of feedback from our members is a lot of the work that's done is very theoretical based, and it's missing that bridge to the market realities. Looking at things like wet industries and their needs and their specific needs is a market reality. So again, it's encouraging to hear that, and it's something that we would like to see built into that modelling, which is probably the on-the-ground verification of what's actually happening in the market rather than looking in the rearview mirror and what's happened in the past. We actually need to be looking more forward and based on actual evidence. So hand over to you, Logan.
Wonderful, thanks, Morgan. Would echo the point around we'd be really keen to have a look at that business modelling and provide written feedback if we had comments to do so. Maybe go a little bit more general around the business land supply, but we'd just flag that across a region-wide lens, we do see it as an element of concern. I think you would have seen in our written submission, we stressed that there are ongoing constraints, which you're starting to see reflected in vacancy rates, rents, and land prices. We think a healthy market would have sufficient capacity to meet both current and future demand, and we'd be really keen to see the modelling when that comes through later on this month or next month.
Okay, no, thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation and submission. I just note that you're supportive of giving recognition to the dairy sector and dairy farming, dairy manufacturing in the context of the development strategy. So it would be remiss of me as a dry stock farmer to actually not ask whether you'd be necessarily adverse to including that as the food and fibre sector in entirety.
Apologies, but are you able to rephrase that question a little bit for us?
I'm wanting a rephrasing of the question.
Right. So I note that in your submission, you're supportive of giving recognition to dairy and dairy manufacturing. Got that bit? Yes?
I'm not entirely sure we address dairy manufacturing in our submission. However, in a general sense, we would be supportive of development for business purposes, be that dairy, food, fibre, or other industries. Kind of key elements for us involve both the supply of land, but also the funding of infrastructure to enable those sorts of business activities.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that was my question about whether an entirety for the food and fibre, or whether you were particularly just sort of supportive of the inclusion of dairy. So thank you for clarifying that.
David.
I've got a question for you around business land generally, accepting that we've still got this bit of data to come, and obviously you'll offer some more commentary, and perhaps it's a request that in that commentary, one, I'm interested what would a healthy vacancy rate be? and you made the comment that if you take a regional view, you still think that there is a overly constrained environment in terms of availability, but I'll be interested if does place matter? We've had a lot of submissions, both verbal and actually written, around, hey, we've got a bit of land we'd like to make industrial and business, and we've got a bit of land that we'd like to make industrial and business, and we've got a bit of land. And I'm interested in your view as kind of I'm not going to call you neutral, but perhaps an organisation with a more generic oversight. Does place matter, and where does it really matter versus not so much in the regional context?
Maybe I'm happy, David, just to provide an initial comment and then let Logan add to it with possibly a a wider mandate working nationally across the property industry. I'd say fundamental to both those questions, so around vacancy rates and also location and so on, would be a fundamental element of a marketplace's choice. So at a 2% vacancy rate, a lot of businesses that are either looking to establish new, move into existing premise, whatever it might be, if we're down at a 2% vacancy rate, the choice is very poor. And I think what we'll end up with in that situation is, as we've said, inflated rents, land prices, everything else. So that artificially constrained market that has a ripple on cost. And also B, inefficiency. So we end up with businesses that are moving to either locations, which is where place comes into it, or facilities or buildings that don't actually suit A, their current needs, and B, their future needs in the most efficient way possible. So I'm sure there's some evidence around it. I would suggest that a healthy vacancy rate, again, this is a finely balanced thing. We don't want it too high, otherwise we've got a whole lot of stock that's sitting there empty and that's not efficient. But equally, we do need that market choice. So rule of thumb, I would say somewhere around that 5% mark provides suitable choice, movement, vacancy, business transaction and options across the marketplace in the space that we're talking about.
Yeah, I would definitely echo those points. We think a healthy vacancy rate would sit higher than 1 or 2% and enable that choice element. In terms of the second half of the question around place, I think that's a really interesting question. You'll have a subset of businesses that to some extent may be place agnostic, but we've probably put to you that for a number of businesses, the place and the location in which they do business has a really consequential impact on how and what they do as an organisation. We'd also put out there, it's worth noting, it's not just a question of place within the Waikato, but for many businesses, it'll be a choice between a business premises location within the Waikato, within, say, the Bay of Plenty, or potentially up to Auckland. We know that there's some very large scale developments going in around the Drury precinct with large business parks and so forth. So really, place is a really consequential question in terms of how and where a business chooses to locate itself. We would circle back at the end of the day to choice being a really important consideration, enabling different industries and different businesses to have the right set of choices in front of them to efficiently choose a premises that meets their needs. Be that within a Hamilton context, some businesses may choose to go more regionally within the Waikato, and larger businesses may be picking between metropolitan centres as to what suits their particular business needs. So from a Waikato lens, having sufficient supply of land to enable businesses to have viable choices on where they choose to locate themselves, we would put forward as really important.
Yes, you can.
So again, just thinking about your commentary after you get this business data, what we've had thus far is a bunch of submissions, and I'll kind of reiterate the issue, and at least in my head, we've had a whole lot of submissions from people who've got land that they want to offer up. We haven't had a whole lot of submissions from business saying, here's where we'd really like to be. And they're quite different things. I'm not asking you for an answer now. That's an observation.
Yeah,
for you to
no,
think about.
happy to just make a quick comment on that one. We are a membership organisation and would never make a comment on a particular piece of land. Any comment we did provide on that business capacity information would be what I'd call more of a system-wide lens. Just spitballing a little bit here, but as an example, we think there is sufficient or insufficient capacity in a metropolitan centre. We think there is sufficient or insufficient capacity across the wider region. So as an organisation, we very much try to keep our commentary at what we'd call a system level approach, given that we have a range of members with a range of individual interests.
Yeah, just to add to that, David, because I understand where you're coming from. Ultimately, part of the strategy, it comes down to putting purple blobs on plans, future growth areas and so on, to probably just capture feedback from our members that we've gone through as part of providing the submission back to you, is that we do not have enough to go through business and industrial land. across Hamilton Metro. We do not have enough business industrial land across smaller areas, probably going down to examples like Morrinsville and Matamata. Each of those have different, I guess, different business and industrial needs. The businesses that go within these areas go from small markets to, I guess, in that either international or national marketplace, so actually competing with areas outside of future-proof. But the overwhelming feedback is, at the moment, some of that modelling that's been done is outdated. There's been a whole lot of changes that have occurred in the last few years, and I think you're obviously across this and got work underway from the member councils. But that also, it's not grounded in, I guess, overlays, whether it's flooding or infrastructure or highly productive lands, or it's land that's been used but sitting there within a capacity assessment saying it's freely available. So I think there's quite a bit of work to be done, and without jumping ahead to receiving this information, that feedback is we need more land, we need more choice, and that's not just one blob in one location, but across multiple areas within future-proof.
Thank you. That's really useful. So since you talked about blobs, the other thing that we've been asked to grapple with is, I think, a bit of a juxtaposition between absolute certainty. Here's a very hard boundary line, thou shalt not develop beyond this, and here's a blob, indicative blob, and of course the planning challenges that go with that. And obviously there's a challenge both ways. Without asking you to speak too much about what your members' preference is, I mean, is the uncertainty and the slightly larger kind of here's a blob, have a crack around here, versus here's a very, very defined line, better or worse?
So yeah, I mean, not wanting to be too technical around blobs, but I think this is why there's so much IQ and experience and horsepower around this table for you to make those decisions. But in simple terms, we would see future-proof providing that overarching strategy. So I would have expected a blob to not be as specific as what you would subsequently see through a district plan, through a plan change, through an individual landowner who is putting forward a merits-based, evidence-based discussion around, is their land highly productive? Can it connect to infrastructure? Is it flood-free? Is it suitable? So all the different elements. Does the market support that location? So we'll leave the answer to that one up to you.
Actually, that's a very useful answer.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Appreciate it.
Last question, Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your presentation and your submission. I just wanted to circle back to some of your comments around transport and our aspirations for more frequent, fast and frequent BRT. You note in your submission point 6.6 about that we need to remain focused on delivering these aspirations in an efficient manner. Could you just expand on how we can take people along the journey with us, with our aspirations, and, bring people with us to get us where we need to go? Because you mentioned it is quite a big change for the Waikato and Hamilton in particular. So, yeah, just interested in your views around that.
Yeah, happy to answer that one for now, and maybe pass to Morgan if he'd had any further comments. Maybe as a general opening comment, we're really supportive of the work that's underway to design and implement an improved public transport network. We're really supportive of that. We think it helps around housing affordability, emissions reduction, and just generally improved connectivity across the region. We probably don't have a specific message to give you today, but maybe a general message we might like to give is this is a change in approach. We think it's a good change in approach, but we do think we need to ensure that we're delivering it in a size that is appropriate for the region, at a cost that the region can afford to pay, in a sense, and one that is robustly engaged. Maybe a kind of concluding comment from me. Robust engagement with the private sector around what that transport plan looks like is critical. If we get transport right, we can unlock urban development opportunities around those transport hubs. For instance, new transport stations and locations can unlock housing, could unlock additional business capacity. The example might be an office park around a bus network or so forth. So really ensuring there's a joined up and homogenous approach to a range of topics, not just transport, but taking one step wider. What's the development opportunities around that, and what do we want these transport networks and these regional hubs to look like? We don't have that answer on how you bring the public with you on that one, but it's a journey we're really keen to support and be a part of.
Thank you.
Just to add really briefly, agree with everything that Logan's articulated there. Just to add, I guess the future-proof strategy is a 30-year plan this is, I guess, a significant shift in thinking to what we've done in the past. As Logan said, it's good, we support it, we need a stepped approach to it. I think at the moment our urban form, our densities and our urban areas don't support the viability of drastically investing in, I guess, significant rapid transport. So I think that over 30 years that will change, and we do need to take a stepped approach to this.
No, a quick
Sorry.
question.
Thank you, through the chair. Tēnā kōrua. I just wanted to ask, wāhi toitu, wāhi toi ora? What's the process that you use to identify those particular areas, given that some of those areas could be sacrosanct?
Happy to jump in with an initial comment. We, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we've avoided taking a concrete drawing lines on a map approach to topics around land supply, both housing and business. We're probably looking to just make a general comment that we acknowledge that there's a range of situations that each piece of land will have applying to it, and there may be sort of cultural or treaty implications for some land. Fully acknowledge that. I guess our kind of general view is maybe this is something we could take a slightly more nuanced relook at, and we're just kind of flagging that as an element for the future-proof organisation, just to have a awareness of.
Yeah, appreciate that. Kia ora.
Sure.
Okay, so that completes this particular session, and there's no further questions. So thanks very much, Morgan and Logan, both for the presentation and your responses to the range of questions from members. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
So we will now move to our next submission, CDL Land New Zealand, submission 41 in page 558 of our agenda. So I've got Jackson and your colleague, if you can move to the table, thanks. So you have 20 minutes. Dave will ring the bell after 10, and that's just an indication then if you want to leave a bit of time towards the end for any questions that members may have. So if you can introduce yourselves, and then over to you in terms of taking us through your submission.
Good morning, everyone. Just by way of introductions, my name is Jason Adams. I am the CEO for CDL Investments New Zealand Limited and the Executive Director of the 100% owned subsidiary of CDL Investments, which is CDL Land New Zealand Limited, which is the owner of 130 hectares in what is known as the R2 growth cell at the northeastern end of Hamilton. With me today is Jackson Bill. He is the Senior Development Manager and General Manager of CDL Land New Zealand Limited, and he'll be presenting today on our submission on future-proof. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Jackson, and if you can just make sure the microphone's close, particularly for those online to hear.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for your time today. So as you can see on the presentation there. It's just a quick outline of the R2 growth cell and where it is. It's in, I suppose, northeast Hamilton, adjacent to the motorway, sort of Gordington, Rototuna area. In terms of changing the slides, how do I?
Let Dave know.
Next page, please. Just reiterating what Jason said, just a quick introduction about CDL Land. We're an NZX listed residential and commercial and industrial developer. Been operating for about 30 years. And our 100% owned subsidiary is CDL Land, who is essentially the operating company of what we do. Next slide, please. This is just a quick little bit of I suppose, context around our experience in Hamilton. We've been developing down here for about 30 years, and as you can see there, we've completed about 1,150 lots in essentially Rototuna Flagstaff area. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick example of some of our projects around the country, just to get a sort of an understanding of what we do. So we've got a large development down in Christchurch, which is about 1,000 lots. We've got another development at Iona and Havelock North, which is about 500 lots. And we've also been doing some industrial development in Wirrie and Auckland. So we have a good understanding of both the residential and commercial markets. Next page, please. This is just a picture of our land holding in relation to the growth cell itself. You can obviously see the motorway on the side there. We've been buying land in R2 since about 2016, and we currently own essentially about 132 hectares there, which is 63% of the growth cell. We've targeted our purchases to control the majority of the land required for the catchment-wide infrastructure. And we're now at a level where we believe we can deliver on a development there reasonably efficiently and effectively. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit about why we believe R2 growth cell should be brought forward in the sequencing. We believe it's a logical next location for Hamilton City's growth. It can incorporate a variety of land uses, including industrial, housing, and neighbourhood centre. There's a boundary transfer agreement in place with Waikato District Council already. The completion of the Waikato Expressway has created a logical trigger for it to be brought forward into Hamilton City and the development to commence. It delivers on the significant investment and benefits that the Waikato Expressway has allowed for. It enables an extension of the Eastern Transport Corridor link and completion of sort of rapid transport in the area. There's no major infrastructure or ecological constraints in the area, and the land is controlled by a nationwide developer with a proven track record of delivery and significant experience in Hamilton. And there's also significant scope for developer-led and funded infrastructure here, with a developer that is well capitalised and willing to get this moving as quick as they can. Next page, please. This is just a little bit of our vision for the R2 growth cell. It involves delivering the right land use in the right location. It includes an industrial portion, a residential portion, and a small town centre or neighbourhood centre. Ideally, we'd like the development to commence in the short to medium term. As saying again, there's capacity for developer-led and funded infrastructure. And we view it as a long-term project, 20 years plus, and which will help create and foster competition within both the industrial and residential development markets, which we believe is sorely needed in the Hamilton region. And then I suppose coming back to the future-proof update and our comments on this draft version. As you can see here, there's been change in terms of the strategy, which says the strategic boundary agreement also exists between Hamilton City and Waikato District Council, and between Hamilton City and Waipaha District. These strategic boundary agreements are a tool used by TA partners to signal agreement that certain land on the boundary of Hamilton may be transferred at some point in the future. They are not in themselves a means of identifying land as a settlement pattern to be included in the future-proof strategy. We strongly disagree with that. R2 has been essentially identified in planning documents going back 20 years that it is part of the settlement pattern for Hamilton. It makes a lot of logical sense. And essentially this change would change the R2 gross cell from being a criteria A development to a criteria A and B. So our main request is this is deleted, or at least highlighted that R2 is not an unanticipated development for the future of Hamilton City. Moving to the next slide, please. This is just again, a highlight the ability of R2 to help with the additional short and medium-term supply of residential and industrial land in Hamilton. The 2024 draft strategy identifies shortfalls for short, medium, and long-term for residential in Hamilton, and it is anticipated that this will also be the case for when the industrial HBA is updated as well. CDL is committed and in a position to bring forward the R2 growth cell in the short to medium term. We have the capability, capacity, and resources to provide developer-led and funded infrastructure. And we believe R2 growth cell enjoys significant advantages as the next logical step in Hamilton's development. It's geographically very well located, close to the city centre, the expressway, inland port, Waikato University. It's located in an area where there is good levels of bulk infrastructure. And it allows Hamilton City to better utilise the existing infrastructure and money that has been spent in the area. It allows for quick and efficient development, and it can provide a mixture of residential and industrial zoning, adding resilience and competition to both markets. And then that's just our request, obviously, to bring forward R2 to a short to medium term timeframe in terms of the future-proof sequencing. And then the last slide we have here is just a bit of a general comment on the housing and business assessment. Obviously, ideally, we would have appreciated if the commercial portion of the HBA was done as part of this process, which goes without saying. And then just generally in terms of the HBA and its assumptions, we just sort of want to highlight that there's in any HBA process, there's an extreme amount, there's a lot of assumptions that's built into this document, which there kind of has to be. It sort of creates significant risk in providing sufficient short and medium term supply, because a lot of the assumptions can lead to big swings in the theoretical, or I suppose, theoretical demand and supply figures. When you're dealing with large greenfield type suburb, I suppose strategy areas, these areas generally take a long time to come online. And obviously short-term swings in any demand and supply figures, I suppose, make it quite a hard process to make sure there's enough supply in the market to meet demand. In terms of the competitive margin of the competitive margin for the development capacity, we view it as a very crude measure of a market's competitiveness. And again, this is just due to the cost and complexity and timeframe to deliver greenfields, residential, industrial land projects. It's resulted in terms of greenfields subdivisions, they're getting larger and larger. And I suppose that's reducing the competition versus sort of infill development where you've got multiple smaller players. And then, yeah, I suppose just to summarise it all, R2 we view as, I suppose, the logical next step of Hamilton. You've got a developer here that's willing to bring it forward and provide funding solutions, and we'd like to get it obviously moving as quick as we can. So, any questions?
Okay, no, thank you. We're really keen on getting the final business assessment work also. And I think you were in the room when I made the comment to the last submitter that we'll send that out when we get it, and also seeking any written comments on that.
Yep,
So,
appreciate that.
So just look out for that in due course. So I'll just open it up. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We've heard from numerous submitters around the need to engage private sector.
Yep.
In your opinion, what would be the best way for future-proof to have that relationship with private developers?
I suppose just come and have a chat with us. We're more than willing to talk and discuss our views at any time. So if you'd like to organise a meeting, we'd be more than happy to talk whenever you'd like.
James.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a question around any issues with HPL in terms of the land class out there. What is it?
It has been identified as likely Class 2 soils, but having said that, we believe, and we've had advice that because this land has been identified as an urban expansion area, it falls outside of the HPL requirements.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? No. So thanks, Jason. And as I said, look out for that business assessment, and certainly look forward to any comments you may have on that, and certainly having those so we can consider them prior to our deliberations in early May.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now move to our next submission, and that's the one of Somerset, and that's submission 44 in page 566 on our agenda. And John Harris is on the screen. So welcome, John. You've been allocated 20 minutes. We'll let you know after 10. And that's really to, if you want to provide some time towards the end of the 20 minutes for members to ask any questions that they may have.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity this morning to speak to Somerset's submission. And I don't intend to take the full 20 minutes. In fact, I want to be generous with everyone's time and crack through this. And I take our Somerset submission as read. So wanted to kind of just give a bit of a speak to, I guess, the overview of the concerning points, but also the points of absolute support for the future-proof draft strategy, which I'll refer to as the draft strategy here. So thank you again for the opportunity. My name's John Harris. I'm a development manager for Somerset. In my role, I have responsibility for village development, really, and that includes right from the identification and acquisition end of the process to essentially, well, through consenting and to the construction on site. I also note that my presentation is the one before the morning tea break. So that gives me added impetus to crack in. I'd like to start first by giving, I guess, an overview and introduction on Somerset and explain what we do. Somerset is New Zealand's second largest developer and operator of retirement villages, which makes it one of New Zealand's largest home builders. In fact, in 2023, March, we were ranked the second largest residential builder by value behind Fletcher's. So Somerset has a proven track record over 30 years in building and operating high-quality, comprehensive care retirement villages. And it's with this that I want to draw special attention to the fact or distinction between comprehensive care villages and lifestyle villages, as it's relevant to the context of the draft strategy. Somerset builds new comprehensive care retirement villages, which means a continuum of care that is provided on site, as opposed to lifestyle villages, which may have minimal or no care provided on site. And given that care component, comprehensive care retirement villages attract an older cohort, with Somerset's average age on entry into a new village at about 79 years of age. And that age increases to more like sort of the mid-80s once a village has matured. Somerset's minimum age of entry is currently 70, and lifestyle villages, on the other hand, typically cater for a much younger active cohort of around about age 55 plus. So there's some kind of distinct difference there in which to kind of make the distinction. So with this in mind, another characteristic of comprehensive villages, which Somerset is the need for critical mass of units in order to be feasible. We've seen in recent years an unprecedented increase in the rate of aged care bed closures across New Zealand since the COVID-19 pandemic began. And this is compounded by a decrease in the planned provision of aged care units by the large comprehensive care operators, largely due to the underfunding of care by the government. So the provision of new care retirement villages in the right locations is absolutely vital to addressing the aged care crisis that is unfolding in New Zealand. This is relevant in that to build a new comprehensive care village, we're increasingly requiring larger greenfield sites, and I'll explain why. Somerset are typically building villages of 9 to 10 hectares in regional areas of New Zealand, and have got a track record of making some recent purchases around the country, Masterton, Rolleston, Mosgiel, just a few examples. New Zealand's population aged over 70 is projected to significantly increase in the coming decades, and the Waikato region is not immune to that statistic. There is going to be an ever-growing need in the next 30 years for retirement villages and aged care to cater for this rapidly growing elderly cohort. And at the same time, largely through the lack of planned capacity of zoned and service land and due to the impact of new national policy statements and standards, it has become more difficult to acquire suitable land for villages, and particularly those greenfield villages. This has meant that we have increasingly needed to resort to acquiring land not currently zoned for retirement villages, and we've had to sort to rezone that land through private plan changes. And those processes inevitably can delay the provision of care and homes and ultimately increase the costs of developing a new village. So that's the overarching sort of context in which we're kind of operating at the moment. But turning to the future-proof strategy specifically, wouldn't mind just talking through the three main areas of concern that Somerset has, and as well as touching on the areas of support, of course, that we have. Those three areas of concern include the, in our view, inadequate provision for the need of an ageing population, including comprehensive care, the over-reliance being placed on intensification to increase housing capacity and supply, and the fact that we believe a nuanced approach to development is needing to be required, as well as there seemingly being a lack of flexibility around alternative funding and financing approaches to infrastructure. So starting with the first one in terms of inadequate provision for the need of the ageing population, New Zealand expects to see a significant amount of population growth over the next 30 years, and the Waikato region has and will very likely continue to see this same trend. This will place a huge demand on housing to accommodate growth. Couple the above, demand for housing with an ageing population that so many regions like Waikato are experiencing, there is a concern that while the trend is recognised in the draft strategy, there is a lack of specificity around how the needs of this ageing demographic will be met. So Somerset seeks the express inclusion of identification of the different types of housing options that need to be delivered as part of increasing supply, including specifically aged care housing, a clear link between the projected aged care demand, or put another way, the Waikato region's elderly population's projected growth, and the projected supply of aged care housing over short, medium, long terms. And this is really to identify supply gaps and aged care housing shortfalls. And thirdly, details of the unique requirements for the delivery of aged care housing. And for example, Greenfields development how Greenfields development plays its rightful part in the draft strategy's balanced approach to the delivery of housing supply. On to the second point of concern, Somerset absolutely strongly supports the recognition of new growth areas suitable for greenfield development. Of particular note is the identification of Rotorua, Rotokauri, Peacock, and Ruakura. For these greenfield areas, however, the draft strategy is critical in providing direction as to where development is appropriate, especially in the context of a region that has relatively high proportion of land subject to NPS controls, highly productive soils, freshwater and indigenous biodiversity. So Somerset remains concerned with the over-reliance of infill intensification to meet the high demand of housing needed, and particularly elderly housing demand, which doesn't anecdotally lend itself to infill intensive housing because terraces and apartment typologies are typically less favoured by the elderly. Similarly, due to economies of scale, it would be very unusual to achieve the same housing supply outcomes on an infill basis as is achievable via greenfield development. Therefore, the provision of greenfield growth areas is very, very important, and particularly for this elderly cohort. And on to the final point, in terms of a nuanced approach to development being required, and there appearing to be a lack of flexibility around alternative funding and financing approaches to infrastructure. And it was interesting following that last speaker in terms of there seemingly being a willingness from the development community to be flexible in this approach. It's very well recognised that the ageing population has unique needs, and therefore aged care housing generates different demand for surrounding services and amenities. A substantially lower burden on infrastructure, such as on the transport network, is also a key feature of the ageing population, and in fact can play a role in reducing the burden on healthcare, as another example, where comprehensive care is offered to residents by way of just a couple of examples. The draft strategy should not preclude out-of-sequence development where it can be shown that it will positively contribute to a well-functioning urban environment, or where solutions to infrastructure can be provided. Private plan changes are a recognised supplementary tool to ensure this responsiveness and flexibility. The draft strategy's approach of essentially blacklisting some areas that could potentially be developed where it can be demonstrated to be done well and appropriately is overly blunt. Somerset supports the recognition of areas less favourable, absolutely, for development, but seeks the recognition that new development in these same areas, where it can be demonstrated to be done appropriately and sensitively, should be enabled. It is also crucial that the draft strategy does not move out of lockstep or undermine the evolving national approach and legislation around climate change adaptation, managing development in risk hazard areas, managed retreat, etc. But in doing so, unnecessarily constraining housing supply in the interim. Tying this together is the role of private developers in the provision of infrastructure. While the need for infrastructure to meet future growth is recognised, it is often at odds with the requisite funding it demands. This is evident by the list of projects in the draft strategy that are either unfunded or partially funded, Somerset seeks that the draft strategy further considers its flexibility with respect to the provision of infrastructure, both in terms of timing and mechanisms. Development contributions, out-of-sequence development, private developer agreements, to name a few, all play a role in bringing forward the delivery of planned infrastructure, in addition to utilising private developers in a fair and equitable manner to deliver infrastructure themselves in order to enable out-of-sequence development to occur, as was heard in the previous speaker. So it's with that I thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thanks, John. I'll open it up for questions. Angela.
Yeah, thank you, John, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. First one would be, what does affordable look like in one of your retirement villages?
It's a fair question, and it, I guess, relates to what the overall context in which that village is in. So usually what we do is take a look at the median house price, because obviously our residents are looking to usually, by and large, sell out of an existing area and buy into a village in which we're developing in. So it would be very, very unusual to not see an affordability link with the existing catchment and the value of those houses in that catchment, with what we are purporting to be what is considered a buy-in price or an affordable price point in a new village. I hope that answers that question.
Not really, but
Well, sorry, just to kind of add to that, what's affordable in one region is not affordable in another. So it's using the house prices, the median house price of an existing area as a proxy for what is affordable.
right, thank you. Also on the assumption that people own their own houses in order to
Absolutely.
be able to sell, which we know in the future will be less likely. On a different note though, just in regards to your submission comments on transport, noting that your minimum age is 70, but your average age is around 79. Your thoughts around public transport provisions or village provisions of shuttles or minibus transport for your residents. How do you currently meet those needs if people are unable to drive? And are you open to developer contributions for readjusting bus routes to service your new villages?
So in terms of the comment was more born out of the fact that the transport, the incidence of, I guess, trips, the trip generation of our residents is less, quite considerably less than what you would consider in a normal development context. So a upwardly mobile resident may be expected to use, say, as an example, a multiplier of 1 on the existing infrastructure, whereas one of our residents might be 0.6 of that usual, I guess, benchmark from a traffic assessment point of view. To answer your question, though, around public transportation and how the village puts on supplementary services, my understanding is that some villages have the provision of village buses, if you like, for those that do not have access to a vehicle themselves. But that's specific to each village and dependent on the surrounding infrastructure. We're continually looking at new ideas around carpooling services, even the idea of valet type services. So it's an ever evolving sort of topic, the providing the amenity to our residents so they feel like they can, get around essentially. It's all part of providing that continuum of care as needs change.
And just my last point about developer contributions to changing bus services.
So in terms of that, I'd hate to go out on a limb and suggest that there was a desire to pay more under development contributions for the provision of or more uptake of public transportation, because I think it's our general view, and it is just a sort of a general comment, that the development contributions paid for the development of 9 to 10 hectare village are quite substantial, one could describe them as. So it's, it would need to be taken on balance and with the specificity of what the individual circumstance was, and in terms of what those services being provided were, in order to say, well, that seems fair and reasonable. The costs involved in developing these comprehensive villages are in some cases up to over $500 million, and development contributions comprise a substantial portion of that development cost bill. So it's not a single factor, but it's made up of a whole bunch of costs in terms of making these villages viable. And as of late, the last few years, I think it's not an uncommon theme for feasibilities in the development world to just be under complete pressure. And in some cases, there are straws that have broken the camel's back. So it's a delicate balance. It's a fine balance.
So I've got Nanaya, David and Liz in that order. David's Nanaya and Liz. And then after that, we will conclude. Nanaya.
Chair. Tēnā koe, John. I just wanted to ask, in terms of care, what facilities do you have that you mentioned earlier that's different from other providers?
Well, I think it's the range of facilities really ranges depending on the operator that we're talking about, but you have sort of the two groups. You have the lifestyle villages and then the comprehensive care villages. Somerset is part of the group or cohort that provide the full comprehensive services around continuum of care. And by that, what I mean is from independent living units where a resident may move in and be completely independent, but enjoy the amenity that is offered around the village, whether it be bowling greens, the gyms and all that sort of stuff, and social activities in terms of libraries, movie theatres, games rooms, etc. As a resident's needs might change, they may have more dependency on care and care in terms of basic level of nursing care, right up to quite very highly intensive hospital care, right up to the spectrum of memory care in terms of dementia patients, etc. So very, very wide spectrum, right from independent through to needing intensive care. And that's the distinction I hope I was clear in making in terms of a comprehensive care villages we develop and operate has got the ability to reduce the burden on existing public infrastructure in terms of on hospitals and the like. It's in some cases like a small little town or city in a lot of ways, especially probably as some of our residents probably think of it as. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I was looking at more of a medical provisions as well. Is that part of the care that they receive on site?
I understand. So you'll please appreciate I'm a simple property guy, I'm a development guy, but I understand with that there is some villages that have there are strict rules around what a village needs to qualify to have hospital level care and whether operations and the like can be performed. I understand certain villages that qualify for that hospital level care have got that sort of infrastructure and in place in those villages.
Thank you. Just the last question, and I quote, provide some flexibility for development in Wāhi Toitu and Wāhi Toiora. Can you give me some clarity on what process do you do or take place to identify that particular paragraph that I just read out?
Yeah, sure. I think it's the key to that is it's not a one size fits all. It's specific to the site or development opportunity we're looking at, and the answer comes in the form of an absolute comprehensive approach to understanding whether development can take place appropriately, where it's identified that the land has got its challenges. That shouldn't be the absolute no-go end of story. We believe it should be it's a good starting point to essentially go to an extra layer of investigation, and that's where you have any number of professional people involved to provide opinion and studies as to how it can be done appropriately, whether it be from ecology to hydrology to any number of expert fields. So it's more a comment born out of because the NPS and legislative work around this sort of space is ever increasing, it's precluding a lot of areas of the kind of land and size that greenfield development for comprehensive villages require, and therefore it's a watch out that it shouldn't be a blanket no-go, but should be essentially a signal to where significant supplementary work is required.
You consider. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Last question, Liz.
Yeah, look, thank you. Hi, John. Liz from Waipa District here.
Morning.
Firstly, a warm welcome to Somerset and to Cambridge. So great to have you there.
Thank you.
There would be some in Cambridge who think that we're starting to look like a retirement village, actually. We've had a large number of providers coming into town over recent years. My question is, to what extent do you work with other providers to ensure that we don't end up with an oversupply? Because I do see there's a lot of empty through the development. There are a number of houses, small homes and retirement villages yet to fill. And as a community, obviously, we will just make sure we get this balance right. So how do you work with other developers? Do you at all?
Liz, I don't actually know the answer to that question. That's probably beyond my my area of expertise, especially when it comes to the fact that you know, we have to absolutely be very careful from a competition collusionary point of view, not to engage in that kind of conversations with other operators, obviously. But we are a participator in the RVA, the Retirement Village Association, and it's through those channels that some degree of well, it's through the participation in that group that you get some of that. But I think it's determined by, speaking from Somerset's point of view, feasibility work and market studies around, and given the numbers and the expenditure involved here, but actually that's besides the point, whether it's $500 million or whether it's, you know, $1,000. At the end of the day, it's about very careful consideration of and market studies, feasibility work on making sure that there is a return on investment in that regard. So forgive me, Liz, for not being able to sort of talk about the swapping or potential swapping of sharing of ideas. What I know is that we do our own work in-house as to how we justify and can sort of see the feasibility and viability of the development.
Okay, well, there's no further questions. So thanks very much, John, both for your presentation and your response to the range of questions that committee members have had. So thank you.
More than welcome. Thank you very much for the time and best of luck for the rest of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So we will now adjourn. We'll reconvene at 10 to 11 and then have the hear from Living Street's Kirikiri Roa as submissions 20 and 26. So hearings adjourned. You have 10 minutes or so for a cup of tea, and we'll start